podcast Era of AI with Rash. This is where we give you solid resources and frameworks on how to work around AI in design, tech, and beyond. And we do so by having conversations with professionals who are already working in the industry and have hands-on AI. Okay, so today we have Rahul. He's the AI research engineer at Phaidra, and he's reporting to us from UK. So very much welcome, Rahul.
Thank you. Really glad to be here and glad to do something fun. I hope this is useful for all the audience, and I look forward to having this conversation with you.
Pretty much sure that it is, and happy to have you here as well. And in this episode, we'll discuss a lot about how AI is used to research, planning, and problem solving. As a AI research engineer, get to know about how we can communicate with AI and much more. But before we dive into that, Rahul, would you like to introduce yourself and take us through your journey?
Well, I am working at the staff level at Phaidra, so staff AI research engineer. I straddle a lot of different roles. Sometimes work with the research team, sometimes work on the engineering side, work on the product side. So many different hats. Did my bachelor's from Indian Institute of Information Technology, Sri City, and graduated in 22. I've been working for Phaidra for the past 5 years, 5.5 years at this point. My God, I'm old. So I started with them in 2020 as an intern. I got lucky. I was just out of my Google Summer of Code with Open Astronomy, and I was being a diva on LinkedIn, writing a few blogs. And the CTO of Phaedra read through the blogs. He liked what I had written, contacted me on LinkedIn, interviewed for a few rounds, and I've been with them since.
Interesting. And we would love to know about your current role. Like at the moment, how do you touch AI day to day, and what are the contributions that you make to a product?
Okay, so for that, you need some context on what the company does. So, Phaedra makes agents for AI factories, which includes everything from making sure that infrastructure at scale can be controlled properly, reducing degradation of equipment, improving power consumption, reducing waste. So, using AI for good, essentially. At the same time, helping plant operators keep their hands on with the equipment that they have, because large scale facilities have so much happening that no single human can keep a track of everything. So, there are AI systems which can be used to do real-time monitoring and analysis of systems. So, in those two broad categories for the time being, I work more on the analytics and observability side. So, my work is in our product called Prism, which incorporates AI systems, LLMs, and other analytics tools to provide a general purpose agent with which plant operators can get real-time analysis and diagnostics of how their equipment is working. This is kind of very much in the need right now because usually for regular data centers or brownfield data centers, the number of equipment is relatively small-ish. So you can think of like five, six different chillers, cooling towers, and handful of pumps. And it's always in the megawatt category in terms of power consumption. With the new hyperscalers that are coming in, because the demand of AI is accelerating so much, it's literally in the gigawatt category with hundreds to 200 chillers and so much more equipment around. So people who had a difficult time trying to figure out how to, wrangle their heads around with a handful of equipment now have to deal with an order of magnitude more.
What do you mean by order of magnitude? I think we can like simplify the terms a little bit because we have multiple listeners.
In simple terms, let's say you're juggling three balls, but now you have to juggle 300 balls. It's basically that. So, because any large scale industrial facility, even with the regularity and composition of a data center, has so many different equipments that interact with each other that you have downstream effects where, if something goes off, let's say in a pump, or a chiller or some piping somewhere or some sensor goes off, the cascading effect that it can produce is very hard to visualize and diagnose, and you only see the cascading effects. To get to the root cause of anything that is happening is quite difficult. So it was difficult already with when you had eight chillers, but now you have to deal with 200 300 chillers or more equipment of that order. So the sheer complexity of things that can change and trigger changes downstream becomes huge. It gets to a point where it's quite unreasonable to expect a handful of people to be able to just keep their tabs on everything that's happening.
And in the whole process, where does AI involve? Like, how do you work around AI with it?
Essentially, it's a question of what we do with AI and how we use AI to solve the problems, right? So the first question is, why is AI needed in this? And for that, you need to understand what does AI do. So AI is a very nebulous term, artificial intelligence. It comes in many different flavors. The most common flavor that people are used to is basically conversational systems or large language models, ChatGPT, Gemini, and so on and so forth. But that is one kind of AI. There are other kinds of AIs also. So AI is this whole nebulous cloud within which there is this subsection which is called machine learning, which is basically using computers to figure out patterns in the data and use that to make actionable decisions in a very general, simplistic form. If there's any technical people listening to this, please don't crucify me. But so essentially, there are two things that you need to do. If you get a large, let's say, volume of sensory data from any given application. To get meaningful insights from it, you need to first train models to do proactive analysis, predictions, and see how patterns lead to further predicted future values of sensors, which can be used to make decisions. Ultimately, you want to make decisions. It's basically you want to make a prediction engine for whatever is important. It could be future power prediction, it could be future, let's say, some other action. It could be maybe the happiness index of the people you're working with based on certain actions you take. Based on that, you take decisions. Now, that's one aspect of where AI is used in my role, where we train models to create systems which can be used to take actionable insights, if you will, and control proactively and make things work better. The other is how do you translate this information in a way where it gives insights to people. There you want to create a interface for them where the access to information becomes very streamlined and the fusion of information is very robust. Because think about it, you have 200 different sensors, all of them have different dimensionalities. Some things change. For example, if you have differential pressure in a system, that changes at the speed of sound. If you have a thermal system, thermal inertia is a thing. Temperature doesn't immediately rise up and like go down. All these things come at different times. How do you fuse this information and provide a meaningful report so that people know what they want to exactly, instead of having to first fetch this information, then parse through it, then figure it out. So there, an interface which can communicate in natural language is quite useful. So one essentially you can think of is a brain that does things for you. The other can be a way of communicating those actions or a way of communicating just surroundings to you in a way which is meaningful. Both of these requires AI. So my role particularly right now is on the conversational side. So how do we make conversational systems which can first gather all of this information properly and reliably, which is very important because LLMs can hallucinate, and then provide this information in an actionable way, be it in form of custom requested plots, be it in terms of reports, be it in terms of real-time data access and analysis on it.
So I'm hearing that AI fits in into very specific moments of your entire processes, but like not everywhere at once. I see you get to decide when you're choosing to use it, when not to, but like it is obviously wrapped around AI for sure. And since I really liked the word that you used, AI can hallucinate or like language models can hallucinate. So on speaking about that, let's say it's very vast. What are the kind of frameworks that becomes essential for you to incorporate?
Yes. So one thing to know is you cannot remove hallucinations completely because large language models are essentially prediction machines. They work on predicting the next token, and based on their prediction, they predict the next token. So let's say if by whatever reason you've predicted a word which may not lead to the right answer, you very rarely can track back. There are some methods of doing that, but I don't think in the models that are available for use in general to the general public that's incorporated that much because it's expensive. What I'm trying to say is it can take a trajectory which kind of prevents it from getting the right answer. It can just hallucinate and keep on hallucinating. You might have seen it with your own use with ChatGPT, where if you just ask it for something and if it's wrong, it can somehow sometimes double down or even fail to understand what you're trying to say. That's expected. So no amount of prompt engineering can completely eliminate this problem, which is good because that makes sure that people like me have a job for the time being before we get replaced. But no, what can you do to mitigate that? And I think from a broader perspective, this is a question which goes beyond my job. If you are working with AI and if you're working with large language models specifically, what can you do to make sure that what answers you get are reliable and useful. In this, it's very critical to make sure that the instructions that you give are valid and concise, which is prompt engineering, yes. But even then, it's always good to have sources that you can refer to because LLMs are excellent at referring to sources when you've provided them. One of the tools that I use frequently when it comes to just my own learning and my own use day to day to figure out exactly if I'm doing things right or wrong is Notebook LM by Google, which is a very popular tool right now in the STEM sort of community, wherein instead of just relying on the exact information that the LLM was trained on or Google searches that the LLMs can do, it requires you to upload documentation or basically information that it can access to. And based on that, it can give you answers. So, for example, if I want to understand how a research paper is structured or how I can use it, and I want to learn it from an LLM and just, parse information, summarize things, I wouldn't go and throw it in Gemini directly or ChatGPT directly. Yes, that might work, but that might have its own issues and it might fail to understand things. I would throw it rather in Notebook LM. It would summarize things for me, and then I can, precisely ask things that are relevant to me and ask about more things. What this means is provide it with a source of information that makes sure that it has something to refer to prevent it from hallucinating or creating problems.
Okay, so the more context you give is
The
better
better it is.
quality the output is, and with more accuracy is it. Interesting. And we see how that changes really frequently, right? Seeing that, like, do you think your role is going to evolve in some way? Do you think it's going to be called something else altogether?
I mean, it has already evolved quite a bit in the last 5 years. So I started in this role as regular AI research engineer. I say regular because junior isn't a technical term, but AI research engineer. Now I am at the staff level. In the 5 years that I've been working at this role, ChatGPT wasn't a thing when I started. So there was no way of using AI for doing AI. Now there is a lot of things that you can do with ChatGPT and LLMs. So while the name or the title that I get is relatively nebulous, I don't think the structure of it can remain the same. Case in point, like I initially was tasked with trying to see if I could implement some cutting edge research papers into the industrial side to see if we could use it with real world data. Now I can have an AI help me implement it. And if it would have taken me a week to do it properly, I can probably do it in, let's say, a matter of days and try out more things. And I can have the AI help me figure out better frameworks. When I say frameworks, I mean uh, programming frameworks, essentially, tools that we can use to code things. So, for example, different testing frameworks or different frameworks for creating neural networks, all those things to see if what I want to do can be done better in a more efficient way somewhere else. All of these things are a force multiplier. So my role will certainly evolve in making sure that I multiply my efforts as much as I can with the technology that is evolving.
Makes sense. And to elaborate more into that and segregating skills in its own places, what do you think would be your superhuman powers in the coming era of AI in terms of hard skills and soft skills, if you want to segregate them into two different tables?
So when it comes to hard skills, I think I got lucky because I started in a research-centric role in the company, which teaches you humility very quickly and teaches you that you need to learn on the job very quickly. In the traditional job market, there is this idea that learning happens in university, and then you just need to adapt to changing things, and you've essentially finished your education, if you will. Isaac Asimov, one of my favorite authors, is famously against this idea that education is something that can be finished, and I totally agree with him. I don't think this is possible. So, in terms of hard skills, the skill that one needs to have first and foremost is the ability to change their mind quickly and learn on the job. Learn how you can use AI as a teacher, as a collaborator, and as something that can help you discover things that you would have otherwise discovered on your own, but would have taken a long time. I count this as a hard skill because, in my opinion, the principal skill that differentiates people in the 21st century is their ability to retrieve information. Access to information it's never been easier. Like, you go back 100 years and tell some medieval farmer that, 100 years from now, you will have something in your phone that can access much of humanity's collective wisdom at your fingertips whenever you want. It would blow their mind. Yet it's very common for us. But with it comes the problem that so much information needs a proper way of channeling. Now, LLMs, as we've discussed, are not perfect, but they can act as a force multiplier. So, using AI to discover information, validate that information with yourself, and learning on the job is a very critical hard skill that can change trajectories quite quickly in your career, and it can differentiate you from someone who just refuses to essentially, do things the new way. And when it comes to soft skills, I would say the ability to not rely too much on AI. I know there's a contradiction in the two things that I'm saying, but essentially, through this contradiction, or I would say competing constraints, you find the optimality, which is a very optimization centric. I need to get out of my job. But anyway, broader point being, yeah, broader point being, so you need to learn how to use AI. And you need to learn how to use it as a force multiplier, not as your replacement, but as something that can make you work faster, more proactively, more in a fashion wherein your output improves not just in quality, but also in quantity. In terms of soft skills, making sure that you don't rely on it so much that you essentially just make it do your thinking. A very nice metaphor that I like to use is mental obesity. Just if you go back 100 years, there were more people suffering from starvation than there were who were overweight. In a matter of 100 years, now we have more people, some reports I've read, don't quote me on this, but more people are overweight or are obese than they are suffering from acute starvation, which is fascinating. This is the first time it has happened in human history. So our problem right now is of too much excess instead of too little. And you have to work out, you have to force yourself to, put in the effort to make sure that you're in a healthy state. AI is going to be the same. The way people can just offload thinking to AI is going to be a problem because that will build a habit of just not doing critical thinking at all. You can just ask the AI to create your app, create your designs, create an image for you, create whatever you want to create, and you're done. You just become basically a glorified messenger between who asks you to do it and what actually creates it. The problem with that is you're going to be mentally obese because eventually when it comes to you sprinting to get something done without access to that tool, you just can't. So a soft skill there is to have the mental discipline to not offload thinking to AI, having the humility to understand that AI is going to be better at retrieving information, therefore processing information and presenting it to you in you or any other person. So not trying to compete against it. It's just like, you can't outrun a car engine in
Yeah.
terms of producing raw power, but you can use it to go from one place to the other. And similarly with AI, you can't outcompete even the language models that we have right now in terms of sheer quantity of stuff they can produce or access to information or parallel processing of information that they can do, but you can use it and don't over rely on it. Otherwise, well, you will become replaceable. You're making yourself replaceable that way.
Makes sense. Rightly said that it's okay to make them as your work buddy, but your brain is going to get rusted if you're not making it go to the gym. So you need to make your brain go to the gym, make it work so that we are not getting replaced by it. Makes sense. One question, it just comes to my brain to ask you that if you have to make like starter kit of being a research engineer for someone who wants to be in your shoes, what are the kind of tools in that starter kit that you would put? So let's say Notebook LM is one that a special one that you mentioned that is being popular right now. What else would you add?
If I'm being honest, if you're just starting out, nothing. And the reason for that is it's very easy to, get addicted to just doing things in an easy fashion. It's like there is this contentious debate in engineering colleges as to what should be your first starting programming language or your just whatever gives you the first touch of what it means to write a program. There are two main groups that I know of. Again, this is all subjective. One is Python, which is very simple. It just does things for you. It's basically pseudo English at a very high level. And the other is the C programming language, which is very old, in which you have to really be very precise, allocate resources yourself, make sure your memory is properly done. One is very hands off. You just have to use your logic, and logic gets translated quite easily. The other is very hands on. You need to know the logic, but also how to implement it properly. You need to know the nitty-gritty of things. Both have their pros and cons, but I think this is the same debate at a much higher level. If you start with AI directly, then you won't know the nitty-gritties. You won't be able to implement things at a level wherein you just know exactly how things are working. It's like a contact sport, right? You can't teach someone how to do judo by making them read a book. They have to go in and do it themselves. All these tools are supplementary. but get your hands dirty. The way I started is, well, we didn't have AI at the time, but when I first landed in college, I spoke to a few of my seniors, and they spoke of neural networks at a very high level. Now, this is just me in my undergrad, and I got paranoid because I thought, well, I don't know anything here, and I don't even know the math. So I remember in my first semester itself, I spent about a few weeks to implement a neural network, basic neural network from scratch. Like using no libraries, no frameworks, nothing, just raw code. I had to write a small library to do all the mathematical operations, matrix multiplications and whatnot, to do everything else on the side. I wanted to use nothing that isn't of my own creation, just because I wanted to know each and every detail. And that helped me, I would say, more than anything else as a starter. Because now when I talk to AI about those things, I can very well succinctly see if it's hallucinating or if it's going in the wrong direction, because in that subtle nuances that you would have otherwise missed, you can see where the problem lies or whether it's not grasping what you are trying to talk to. So if you're starting out, do things by your hand. I know it's tough. I know the temptation to just make the AI do things for you is very easy, but again, this is the way you get to mental obesity. Don't go for the hamburger right away. Go eat a salad first. Then, of course, you can have the force multiplication effect of AI. This is important, right? It's a force multiplier. So you need to have a force that it can multiply. If your force is also zero, it's not multiplying anything. You need to increase your force so that it multiplies the force.
Makes sense. I think that was filled with wisdom to start from scratch and have the core basics understanding pretty solid, because I think that gave me the metaphor of get to know how to sew with your hand first and then put that into the machine and use that to multiply it.
Exactly.
I think we've covered good enough of the 9 to 5 processes and workflows. I do want to get to know how AI is shaping outside of work in your life. Is there any way that it shows up?
Well, essentially, it's a very useful engine for parsing information, like I said. So when you move outside work, there are so many things that you want to do. So, for example, if I want to, let's say, study a new subject, for example, these days I'm trying to teach myself how to get better at differential geometry, which is a subject in math, or something else. I would often ask AI for some basic tools that I need to understand. From there, I would ask it to give me a compiled list of recommendations and books, other resources that I can access. And from there, create a plan for me so that I can understand these subjects in a more succinct fashion. Now, if you ask it to teach you, you again run the risk of it going bonkers and telling you 2 plus 2 equals 2. Again, that's a very naive example. It won't do that, but I'm exaggerating right now. But if you ask it for resources, and if you ask it for a plan, more often than not, it will save you time. So again, you don't need to follow it by like blindly. You still should use your mind and abandon that plan or modify that plan as the time requires. A key theme in all the things that I'm talking about is never completely stop thinking. Always make sure that you're also doing things the way you would want to do things. It's just a tool that you can use. So, teaching myself things, or if I'm planning a vacation, then helping me plan those things. If I want to make a new recipe to figure out how different, like what different styles I can cook it with, or just asking for resources in general. I don't like the idea of using very hyper specialized apps, because then either they don't keep up with the times. AI is moving very quickly. 2022 was the Stone Ages, if you will, and that's just 3 years ago. So, unless you can guarantee that whatever tool you're using will be able to keep up with the pace at which main architectures are evolving, they're going to get redundant and old and pointless pretty soon. So just use the main model providers like Gemini by Google or ChatGPT by OpenAI and Claude by Anthropic. Those are good because you can have an idea of, the most recent research will be reflected there.
I think it was more about still work than outside work, but I liked how you
Yeah.
mentioned that it helps you still plan. I think that's the nerd in you speaking. Even outside work, you still use it for plan, learning. It surprises me, but okay, if that's your way, why not?
I have a very, let's say, how should I describe this? AI is a tool. I don't want to, I am a little paranoid about making it do things for me that I would want to do myself. So I just figure out areas in my life where busy work is required, and I try to make the AI do it as much as I can. Gathering information and making a plan is a busy work in my opinion. I don't like planning that much. I'm more chaotic that way. So making that do it for me, sure. Then doing it myself is how I try to stay sharp.
So you're using AI to get more time in your hands on the things that you want to do.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Precisely.
And I really liked how you mentioned that 3 years ago was a stone age. That is true. But that gets really overwhelming, right? I feel like things are changing so fast. People, listeners, me, everyone, all of us gets really overwhelmed. So what's one piece of advice or one call of action you would like to give to the listeners to stay confident in this ever evolving era of AI?
Well, if it gets overwhelming for you and the listeners, think about it for people like me who have to read research papers for a living. When there are like thousands of research papers being published every bloody week. But I mean, it's very exciting if I'm being honest. Like, it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And frankly, in unconventional circumstances like these, being overwhelmed and going a little crazy is the correct behavior. Because you are dealing with well, an explosion and proliferation of information that, well, you might have not seen before. So don't be harsh on yourself if you feel a little overwhelmed. That is expected. Overwhelm or stress is another side of the coin where the other side is excitement. It's like being a kid in a candy store. That's also overwhelming, but when there's candy all around you, so it's also very, very exciting. Balancing that, channeling your overwhelm and anxiety into excitement is the way forward. There is no other way of, just grasping it. I don't think anyone grasps everything. If they did, then well, they would require omnipotence, and I don't think anyone has omnipotence. Make sure that you keep up to date with the recent developments in the field that you are interested in. Maybe spend a few hours every week reading up on just, subscribe to good blog posts, subscribe to good survey channels, which give you an idea. Like, for example, for me, there are a few YouTube channels that I very regularly subscribe to. There's 2 Minutes Papers, there's Yannick's channel, where they go over recent papers which are of consequence. The key here is that research, while is combinatorially huge in terms of volume it produces, it's also incremental. Like very rarely would you have something that is so different from what is being done that it is completely new, it requires a paradigm shift. Even that happens, it's quite rare. So if you build some momentum in keeping up to date, you will be able to very quickly pass through how things are happening and what changes are there. Changes are minute. You can just keep a track of what they would be, and you can keep on evolving as it is.
Again, that was really wise of you. And this gets me to the last question on this podcast. Let me think which one I want to ask you because it's a surprise question and I try to ask like a new one or like a different one. Tell me, at the age of 45, what's one thing Rahul is going to be so glad that the current present moment Rahul is doing? If you got the question.
Yeah. Okay. Hmm. Interesting. So I have had the fortune of reading very good books when I was growing up, and they've made a great impact on me. One idea that I always took from them is, let's say you said 45, let's just go with 80 because why not? The reasoning behind it is also is important, right? Because if I just tell you what I want to tell you, you'll call me a nerd again, which is fine, but fair. The idea is, let's say you're old and you're writing your biography, right? How do you want that biography to be read by, let's say, 14-year-old you? 14-year-old me would consume books essentially. I would read like 4 or 5 books a week and good thick books like classics and whatnot. So if my biography at that time reads like a boring read of a guy who had ideas, but then he just got comfy in his job and, made some money, was comfortable, didn't do anything fun, was too happy with the status quo, I would not read that book. And that would be a tragedy in my opinion. What would be better is something that is a action, adventure, comedy, drama, which is just, it's a swashbuckling adventure, if you will. Now, anything that I do right now in my professional and personal life should lead to that goal. At least that's how I live. So, in terms of that, what am I doing right now to make sure that goal is achieved? Well, something that I'm doing right now, which I really appreciate at least, is I am making sure that I study more math than is required for my job. Because it opens up dimensions of thinking that you can use to do things. My research project during GSOC was to predict solar flares using AI. It wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't spent the time to study maths, which was out of my curriculum at the time. My current job does not require me to study differential geometry. It's not directly required, but I'm trying to understand that because I want to understand Einstein's equations for relativity. Is physics directly related to my work? No, but things like those in the future might be useful when I want to start my own company or just want to explore things. Not losing your curiosity and not losing the initial spark, which, got you to do cool borderline science fiction stuff, is something that 45-year-old me would be very proud of. In a nutshell, I know that's a rambling answer, but well, I'm speaking on the fly. The idea is not to give up your curiosity just because you're getting comfortable with the life that you have. Always putting yourself out there and always being uncomfortable and learning something new.
And that is a really rare answer that I got, that's for sure. And I really like how you mentioned that you're learning it more than just required because you just never know how you can apply it. This is where we come to the end of this episode, and I believe overall the conversation was something really different what usually happens on the episodes that I have on my channel. But it's really nice to have a fresh breath of air and something more technical, something more different, and a very rare role. Not like a developer's or a DevOps role, which I usually like am used to talking to. So thank you so much for this rich conversations and a lot of awareness about the role as well. And on top of that, I feel like it was a lot themed about how not to worry about AI and use your brain and keep it not have a brain obesity is what you said. So thank you so much, Rahul, for joining me. And I will sign off here and I will see all the listeners in the next episode.